Hello, everyone. I believe I'm actually live this time. Welcome to Rob's Rogues and another edition of Rob's Reading Room. This should be episode 3. I think I labeled the last one episode 1 and the one before that episode 1. So hopefully I've got that fixed up. Correct. I love going live. There's no editing here. So again, welcome. I usually do these live Google Hangouts, and I'm generally not catching anybody live as they're probably not surfing through the channel. And the Memorial Day, or excuse me, Labor Day holiday has just ended, and I took a second day off work. Don't tell anybody. Shh. So I decided I was going to do one of these, and I think one of the last ones I said I was going to do was going to be for World's Finest Huntress Power Girl, the Batman Superman crossover. And I got just my phone vibrated. Sorry. And I decided I was going to do something else instead. I'm still planning on doing that. There's also the Hunt for Robin and the Robin Rises storyline that I would like to do. I kind of want to catch it probably midway, at least catch up with the Hunt for Robin, and then we're kind of in the early stages of the Robin Rises storyline. So I think I can get us caught up to date. Maybe I may even do another one of these, maybe even next week sometime, once the current issue of Batman and Robin has come out. So the one I've decided to do today is going to be for, as you probably read on the description, Batman 0 Year, the very, very long, year-long story arc that Scott Snyder and Rick Capullo did that took a break from the New 52's current timeline and went clear back to the very beginning of Batman's history for the New 52. So this initially, when it was announced, did have some people, I'd say, kind of upset, basically kind of throwing out Frank Miller's Year One. Basically, I wouldn't say they threw it out. This is not meant to replace it. This is just for the current universe that's established for the New 52. New 52, they wanted a modern take on the Batman origin and kind of just change some things a little bit. And Scott Snyder did change quite a few things, but there are some very strong Batman elements that you can't get away from. It's not like he changed the death of his parents and the reasons why he becomes Batman, but the reasons or the road to him becoming Batman is changed slightly. Now, what I decided to do with this, and I'm going to count here on camera. Let's see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's not count those. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes, a year. So I want to make sure that was right. And in the middle are about 7 other books. And I'm missing one, and I'll explain when we get there. So here's the stack of books that it would take to read Batman 0. I'm always wanting to say Year 0. 0 Year. There were some crossover books probably about after the 5th or 6th issue. I can just read you the ones that I have here. They crossed over with Detective Comics, Green Arrow, Batgirl, Nightwing, Action Comics, Green Lantern Corps, Red Hood and the Outlaws, The Flash, Catwoman, and I'm missing Batwing. It's currently in my comic book story. Now, you didn't need to read any of those. I'm just going to stop there because we will eventually get to that. What I decided to not do, generally as I'm dropping comics all over the place here, generally what I'll do is, usually fresh after a story arc is complete, I've decided I'm going to do a reading room, or shortly after that. And generally most arcs are going to be 5 to 6 issues in length, maybe 7 on a good run. Scott Snyder on a short run is about 7 issues. Death in the Family, I think, went 7 or 8 issues. Court of the Owls went 11 issues, and 0 Year went a full 12 issues. Actually, they skipped one. Issue 28 was the Batman, if I can get out of the way, Batman Eternal preview issue. So it skipped a month. So it technically went 13 months, but the story actually was only in 12 months. So he did a full year's worth 12 months of storytelling to tell Batman's origin in the New 52. And generally, if the arc was a little bit longer for the reading room, I would go back and I would just reread. That is 13, 14 some odd issues. Not that I didn't want to, and at some point I will reread it, but I wanted to give my feelings on the Zero Year storyline, which will kind of go into the length of the 0 years. Probably doesn't make any sense, but hopefully at the end of this video we will. So they took Batman back to year 0, or from when Bruce Wayne comes back to Gotham City for the first time. And you're going to find out pretty early in this video that my memory is going to have some big gaps in it because the story was so long. Frank Miller did it in 4 issues and told a very, very good story of the creation of Batman for that current, or for that universe, in our previous universe. Excuse me. So Scott Snyder decided to take it in 12 issues, and as much as I love Scott Snyder, and definitely the Batman book with Snyder Capullo is the biggest book for the New 52, it is definitely the flagship for DC Comics. And Scott Snyder puts a lot of dialogue into one page, and it just makes it for a very rich story. He tells a really good story, but in the middle of his story there are some lulls and probably some filler issues. And I'm kind of wondering if 0 Year couldn't have been condensed down into a lot smaller story. Does he deliver? So I'm going to kind of go through some of these the best that I can, and that's to kind of show you the length that this story went. A year ago is when this story had started. The last issue was 33, and I think we're at 34 issues now into the New 52. So the next little break before Scott Snyder's next big story arc happens. So it's only been a month since, actually 2 months now that we're into September, since 0 Year has ended. So I wanted to see, could I do a reading room on a book that lasted this long, and or is it something you're going to have to go back and read? And I can just tell you, just in this early stages of doing this video, that this is definitely going to have to be a reread. And it's always funny when something is currently out, to go back and try and reread something else is sometimes hard, because I'm wanting to keep up on what's current, and then trying to go back and read something older, even from my Robin podcast, sometimes it's kind of hard to do. So the story initially starts off with Batman coming back to Gotham City, but he's played off as having been dead. He went out and did his training, and Bruce Wayne isn't entirely sure that Bruce Wayne needs to be alive, that this idea that he has to want to avenge his parents' death can probably be done without the help of Bruce Wayne. We can just let the Wayne legacy die, and he will have a more effective way to being a full-time vigilante, and he's not exactly sure what that is. And some of the first initial starts here, we can see him coming up with the first part of the Bat outfit. It's established in the first 3 issues that maybe having the guise of some type of vigilante is going to work, and it's that is something he's wanting to do. So he starts creating this Batman persona and gets involved with the Red Hood gang, which is also kind of the origins of the Joker, and we're really not sure which character the Joker is starting at the very beginning of the story. And Bruce wanting to understand the criminal element, and what better way is to jump right into one of the biggest being the Red Hood gang. So, and again, my memory is really going to fade here, so this reading room may be completely horrible, but I think that's going to show you the complexity and the density, if those are even 2 real words, of this story. Again, it's a very well-written story, but it's one that's going to have to be reread. He is able to infiltrate the Red Hood gang, but is easily picked out right away from their leader, who isn't necessarily the Joker. He's one of the other henchmen, and it's quickly found out that Bruce Wayne is very much alive. And also with the help of Alfred and then Bruce's uncle, them saying that Bruce Wayne needs to come out of hiding and needs to fight for the Wayne legacy, and then all these resources that the Wayne Enterprises had, his uncle is the time that it's kind of he and Alfred have this conversation, could be put to use for Bruce's war on crime. Eventually he does get to the point in the story where he becomes Batman. And the cool thing about this, and I want to try and open this up on camera, I'm sure everybody has seen this, but some people may have not, is the callback to the original Batman look, and Detective Comics 27, you can kind of see here, is the moment where he decides that being Batman is the thing that he actually needs to do. So we have this moment here. The lights being turned out in Gotham City due to this massive flood. Edward Nygma, geez, I'm going to get this all botched up. Edward Nygma is also in here working for Wayne Enterprises, something that Bruce's uncle is, I guess, partly responsible for creating the Riddler and Edward Nygma. Edward Nygma, man, I'm not going to get that right at all. As I'm trying to get these around here, apologize about that. So once Bruce has kind of established himself as Batman, he's still a very new and a very novice Batman. So he takes a lot of licks and a lot of bruises. But what you kind of find out in the story through once Bruce Wayne has kind of come back out of hiding, as it were, into the general public and saying that he's going to be part of Wayne Enterprises and pick up for where his father left off, his uncle has really kind of seen some of the worst in Gotham City and has got himself involved in something that he's really not sure if he should be a part of, and is actually wanting to try and kill Bruce at one point to really cement the fact that he's going to be the one in charge of Wayne Enterprises. But what we find out is that Bruce Wayne doesn't trust Commissioner Gordon, because at one time Commissioner Gordon was running around with a cop that wasn't so on the up and up, and they were taking bribes. And what they would do, the bribes would be taken in the form of a trench coat, that they would take trench coat into the cleaners, and money would be laundered into the police department, or whatever bids or payouts that the police department was going to turn and look the other way would be put into this trench coat. And that's where young Bruce Wayne kind of picks up on what's going on when he has his first meeting with Commissioner Gordon. So it's that trench coat that he sees kind of riding with the police department on the way to the police station, that they go in and pick up a bribe. And what the reader, ends up finding out that Commissioner Gordon wants no part of this, and the reason he ends up wearing this trench coat is to show how rotten and how bad the city could become. Gordon, wanting to be this good and straight and narrow cop, almost got himself killed with his partner and group of partners. His family had a couple threats taken upon them. So it was a really cool story. It kind of harkens back to Frank Miller's just a little bit, where Gordon is trying to be the right cop in a very corrupt city, and Batman, Bruce Wayne, is trying to be this new thing he's come up with in a very corrupt city, so they're not seeing each other's heads. And a couple times Commissioner Gordon is actually thinking that Bruce Wayne could potentially be this new Bat character. So that's kind of the last beat we have here in the story. And then what DC Comics decides to do, if I can grab them all here, is, of course, it's tie-in time. Boy, there's a lot of them. Just when I think I'm done. Wow. Guess I had forgotten there was that many here. It's tie-in time. So we get some tie-ins from Detective Comics that you don't necessarily have to read for 0 year. Some of the stories are basically what the other people in Gotham or other characters of Gotham City were doing at the time of the 0 year. And what the 0 year is referred to is the blackout that Edward Nygma, man, I'm never going to say his name right. It's the Riddler, that's Riddler yet at this point, blacks out the city with all this chaos and bad weather and flooding going on, and Gotham City being in almost a complete state of gridlock and almost going back to the Stone Age. You have these stories that take place. So this one basically follows what Commissioner Gordon was doing with the police department, which kind of picks up at the end of that story, so we won't go much into that. Some of the interesting ones were Green Arrow. Green Arrow has just come back from his time on the island and is tracking somebody down, his mother, in Gotham City. So he has a brief encounter with Batman here. So one of the very first appearances of Green Arrow in the New 52 does happen kind of alongside of Batman. So two very early vigilantes trying to figure out what they're doing. So he's not referring to himself as Green Arrow. He just happens to have his kind of Green Arrow garb that he was wearing on the island. So it's a very interesting story. Another one that moves on is Batgirl. During the flooding, of course, this is a young Barbara Gordon who has her crazy psychopathic brother to deal with. But it's a series, it's a flood that is going on in Gotham City. And with her father saying, stay here, there's chaos going in, this horrible weather has come into Gotham City, and it's basically flooding every street in Gotham City, and it's her ordeal trying to get her and her brother out of the city to a safe place. And it was a really interesting story. Up next is Nightwing. It's the time just before Dick's parents had died, and it's right as the circus gets established in Gotham City for their run right before their parents' death. And this is squeaky clean Dick Grayson trying to go out into the city, and after he has kind of a little bit of a fight with his parents, he gets kind of mixed up with some hoodlums, if you will, and it's Dick trying to make the best of a bad situation. So I thought this was kind of cool too. Another one here is Action Comics. Now this is the one that I picked up because it had the 0 year title on it, but it really didn't have much to do with Gotham City at all, other than there's a couple mentions that Gotham City is basically almost completely underwater with this bad storm. So it's just kind of in passing by what Clark has going on in his first year in becoming Superman. The next one, Green Lantern Corps, which I thought this one was pretty interesting. This is John Stewart before he becomes a Green Lantern, when Gotham City, again, most of always take place in Gotham City, is completely under siege, and there's all kinds of rioting and chaos going on. You call in the National Guard, which is where John Stewart is. And another villain that makes an appearance in here is Anarchy, which I thought was really kind of cool, that John Stewart and the GCPD come in contact with Anarchy. So for any Green Lantern fans out there, it's kind of cool to see John Stewart's early steps into the New 52. Again, it takes place in Gotham City. Where are we at here? Jason Hood and the Outlaws. Basically, it's only Jason Hood. I've said this in every video. Jason Hood, Red Todd. Jason Todd, Red Hood. There we go. And this is what he was doing in the New 52 prior, or while the 0 year was going on, before he becomes Robin, even before Dick Grayson becomes Robin. And he witnesses a couple murders, and Talia al Ghul gets involved in here. So it's setting up the seeds for Talia's involvement with Jason after he would be killed by the Joker. So another interesting run there. Where else are we going? The Flash has been called into Gotham City, Barry Allen, because they need some forensic and science work for the GCPD. So Central City loans one of their very finest out here to Gotham City. It's just basically a crime, a cop crime story that Barry gets to solve while 0 year is going on. And the last one I have is the early stages of Catwoman Selina Kyle, kind of progressing from cat burglar and moving into her Catwoman persona by the end of the book. And it's just basically a jewel heist, and then what the rich snobs of Gotham City were doing for fun while everybody below, the city streets that were filling up, and she kind of takes matters into her own hands. So those were a couple looks at kind of what some other DC characters are doing. Batwing deals with Lucius Fox's son, Joe Fox, and I don't have that book. I'll eventually end up picking it up and adding it to the collection, but I really can't tell you any more than that. And then moving on, once we have the defeat of the Red Hood gang by the hands of Batman, and the Joker Red Hood being kicked into the vat of chemicals, or dropped into the vat of chemicals by Batman in a very cool issue, we move on to the second phase of Zero Year, and it is basically the Blackout section, and the cover was kind of cool. Reminds me of Metallica's Metallica album, the Black Album. Everything's all black on black. So the last few issues of this just take dealing with the Riddler's rise into Gotham City and the total greenhouse effect, as it will. The Riddler has really rendered everyone in a virtual wasteland. He's taken complete control of the city, and after a fight with the Riddler that Batman has on basically a hot air balloon, so I'm trying not to drop all these, Batman falls to the ground, ends up being knocked out for a period of like 3 or 4 months trying to recuperate. Batman wakes up to a very different looking Gotham. Everything's overgrown, it's green, and initially when I thought this came out, I thought Poison Ivy was also going to appear in this, and she doesn't. And I'm kind of spinning through this rather fast here, but then we get to the final confrontation of Batman taking back the city, and it's a series of riddles that no one has been able to answer for the past 5 months, basically 3 or 4, maybe 3 to 5 months. I can't remember the exact time frame. So of course Batman is able to outwit the Joker, able to outwit the Riddler and save the day, and get Gotham City back to being under complete control again by the GCPD. The spoilers here, what we find out at the very end through all of Batman's journey through Zero Year, that he committed himself shortly after he got back to Gotham City to Arkham Asylum. He really wanted to understand the criminal element and was almost at a point where he couldn't get over that. So he was just about to go under shock therapy and have a lobotomy almost to forget the hurtful, the painful memory of his parents' death, even through all the training and everything that he had done. And at the last minute, he has an epiphany and decides that's not what he's going to do. So for a brief time, Bruce also locked himself up in Arkham Asylum. So I kind of breezed through all of that to say it's a very, very dense story. About 15 issues, if you, or maybe even 16 if you go through all of the crossover books to tell a story, and I think he probably could have done it over the course of a 6 or 7 story arc, which is still would have been a very large story as well. I don't think you needed the crossovers. You could have done that in other little panels here or there. This isn't a very insightful reading room, I know, but I kind of wanted to be able to shoot right from the hip and go through a story that is really, really large, and seeing what I could remember from it, which I think shows you how dense the story is. It's probably going to be in a 3-trade series. I think the first series, it's broken up into 3 acts, so I think it's definitely going to be in 3 trades, and they'll probably do a 4th trade of all of the tie-in issues that go into telling that story. So that's going to kind of wrap up the reading room for today. It's just been kind of me blathering through this Zero Year, but I kind of wanted to show kind of what can happen when you're telling a very large story and it's spanning such a long time that you start forgetting what's going on. I do think it was a very good story as I was reading it, but I felt like it was just taking so long to get, from month to month to month, 12 months of reading this story, that I thought after about the 6th month I was ready for the story to wrap up. And that was the interesting thing about it. With each chapter, you kind of wrapped up Bruce's arrival back into Gotham City, and that wrapped up that phase. And then you get into the Joker or the Red Hood phase, and then that wraps up. And then you get into the Riddler phase. But the Riddler phase had its seeds going back into the very first arc, which did make the very first part of Zero Year, which makes the Riddler kind of the big baddie through the whole entire thing. So I thought it was a very good story, but it's just a very, very dense story that this is going to be one that I'm going to have to sit back and read. And now I will have a luxury of being able to read all 12 issues and even throw in the tie-ins if I want to. And I think the story will make more sense and it'll flow a lot better. But going from a month to month to month, 12 months of storytelling, you start losing the bits and pieces of the story and going, I don't remember this happening. And I remember having to dig back through the comics and go, oh yeah, that's right, this is like the maze that the Riddler put Batman back in the very first part of the story, and it's now kind of the end maze that the Riddler has put Batman back in. And even some of the very first riddles, the Riddler springs on Batman again, but twists them a little bit differently. So again, it's a very good run, and I can see why Scott Snyder, and being a Batman fan, of course, I'm on the Bat title, why Scott Snyder is kind of held to high such esteem. But I would really like to see him write a much smaller, concise story. And from what I am hearing of the next Batman arc that's coming out, it's supposed to be even larger than Zero Year. So if that went 12 issues, this next one could go 13, 14, 15. And then currently we have Batman Eternal that's going on, that's going to go 52 issues. So for some reason, Batman Eternal makes more sense to me. I don't know, but this is my rambling look at Zero Year from Batman. Let me know what your thoughts of the Zero Year, from what you remember of the Zero Year story 12 months later. So thanks for tuning into the Rob's Reading Room, and I promise the next Rob's Reading Room will be a little bit more concise for you. But again, this was to kind of show how big this story was, and without having a second read-through, your memory kind of goes, woo. So anyway, thanks for this bizarre reading room, and we'll get back to some more proper reviews. Thanks, everybody. Bye.